So mind in Danchen. So we want that to be the opposite of the way we used to do it. So it used to be sort of just having a sense of bulbousness here, just this feeling that your belly is bloated and extending forwards. Now we want that mind in Danchen to just be a draw in. So your lower back is rounding out with the Min Meng pushing backwards and the sacrum just cupping under. So the legs rounded out. The outside edges really cutting into the ground towards each other under the ground. So now let's just move from leg to leg. So what we've been doing is pulling with the empty leg. So basically tightening the hamstring, bending the leg, and pulling myself towards it. Now I want to use the empty leg to push myself into the foot. It's a bit like if a person was standing in front of you and you wanted to draw them towards you. The obvious thing to do would be to reach forwards, grab them and pull them towards you. Now, if you do that, they're going to resist. So it's much more subtle if you actually just reach behind them and just push their back towards you. If they're not expecting it, then they'll be really shocked because the last thing they'll be expecting is a push from behind. So that's the feeling here. The feeling is that we extend the outside edge and push the ground this way to move myself in that direction. So I'm scooping with the leg. So it's just the action in the knee that we've been working on, but with just this real feeling that this really opens and you're pushing the ground this way with the outside edge of your foot, and that's moving you in the other direction. So it's ward off. Because what happens is the leg is straight, the arm is straight, and it's simply the arm bending, but bending from here, from an extension of the shoulder, rather than bending by doing this. I'm really getting behind something. That's the feeling. So it's just an embrace, really, drawing the other towards you. And in this case, the other is that piece of ground. So the same way when you do it with the arm, you feel it in the shoulder. It's like the shoulder rises up and extends out and extends down the arm. It's the same thing in the legs. It's like the hip. It's like the hips become really sort of strong and big. All the time, the belly is pulling into itself, pulling towards the midline, towards the back. It's a real sense that your leg is emanating from your sacrum, from your back, from your spine. The same way the arms are coming out of the spine. They're not coming out of the shoulders. They're coming out and then around. They have to really go around the corner. And then into riding horse again. So just feel the dantian pulling into itself. So the front of the belly is drawing in so that you can really relax and spread from the middle of your sacrum, encouraging the sacroiliacs to just let go of the hip bones a little bit. Using local tension to produce a relaxation around it. It's a bit like, when you tense the bicep, it will relax the tricep. So that the muscles the other side of the bone will be forced to relax and extend. So the feeling here that I'm tightening here in order to relax and extend across my sacrum. And then that just extends down the legs. So what we're trying to do really is just use this force inward with the feet to spring open here. Now, it's the same when you're meditating. So when you're meditating and the hands are together, however they are together, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they can be like this, they can be like this, they can be like this, you know, the way Mary prefers. But the feeling is that you're pushing slightly. You're pushing the hands together. If you push them too hard, then everything will just get tense. You want to just apply the tiniest pressure in order to encourage the shoulders to expand across the back, the same way we're using this pressure to encourage the sacrum to expand across the back. So this is something that John was quite firm about when he taught us to meditate, was just not letting the arms collapse. So a lot of meditators, they wouldn't have the hands resting on the knees or on the feet. They'd be up, and there'd be just a slight pressure, you know, just enough just to spring the shoulders and the back open. And it's the same in prayer posture. So when you're like this, there's just enough pressure to get it to spring across the back. And then you can just bring that down into the hips as well. So using the pressure here to open up the hips. And that's basically what ward-off is. So ward-off is a sense of movement in this direction in order to get a movement at the other end of the arms in the opposite direction. Trying to do it the intelligent way. Trying to just locate the quality of mind that's required that would actually make all this happen naturally. So that sense of real alert awakeness. The way I try and explain it to my students, you've woken up at night, you're in bed, it's dark, you're on your own, and you've woken up for whatever reason, and you're just lying there trying to get back to sleep, and all of a sudden you hear something downstairs or in the next room, and you just think, fuck, there's an intruder. Imagine the sort of the change that would come over you, not just your mind, but your body as well. Because the adrenaline would start pumping. And so you've undergone a chemical change. So your mind would just be bristling and ready, and your body would have the right tone for it to act really, really quickly. So it's a bit like that. We've just got to really be able to just use our spirit to just bring about a chemical change in the body, really, to sort of just rouse the adrenaline. Just a little bit, so that we can achieve the mind that would make all this structure spring out. So I don't have to physically sort of do it, because that's always going to be slow. So it just seems like an impossibility, because we're sort of using our own spirit to wake up our own spirit. That's what happens, you know, when you meditate. You know, if you're meditating for as long as it takes, and it may take 2 hours, then there will come a point where something just switches, and you're no longer struggling to quiet your mind. You're just suddenly right in the middle, and you're just gazing out, and the whole room is just alive. So that's what we're trying to get to. That's like enlightenment. It's an experience that's beyond where you are. So it's like we're aspiring all the time. We're always looking beyond the horizon. Feeling the dantian, and we'll just turn around it. Turning, trying your best not to let it tense across the back. So the two legs are like hoses of water, and the water is just pouring from your spine down each leg, and it's that that's holding you up. So there's a sense that it's the force of the energy flow that's actually keeping you up rather than the strength here. And I don't really need to create that flow. I just need to stop blocking it. Again, it's this foot cutting like that that's drawing me round into it. So it's exactly what we were doing, but now just using it to produce a turn as well as a movement left and right. and then just back. And now making the circle with this at the center on the vertical plane. So just using this exercise. So really use the legs to take you up and down rather than bending the back too much. The circle, it has your belly at the center rather than your heart. So just feel it all coming from the belly. The belly being supported and fed by the legs. And then just changing direction. Try and keep your mind on the sacroiliacs, really. So almost like the kidney region. So think of the Dan Chen as being a center with these two reservoirs, which are the two kidneys. So I'm just trying my best not to tense across the sacroiliacs. So I have to keep a presence in the kidney region with my mind. Almost a sense like those two regions are expanding, are swelling. Try and use the legs a bit more. So when you go down almost into a squat. So the legs should be hungry to take you down to the ground. And then just wind it down. Back to riding horse again. Yeah, so I use this action to spring open the kidney min-meng area. So I just want to feel the intensity in my spirit that's required to keep that sort of open and throbbing. And now let's breathe. And just go straight into the reverse breathing. Breathing in as you bring the hands together. And then out. So when you draw the belly in, it forces the energy into the back, making it expand. So it's my sucking in that starts it all. And then it's my blowing out that starts this phase. So I suck in and slowly everything comes in, and then I push out and slowly everything comes out. So the body always lags the energy. Okay, so riding horse again. Yeah, so we have to grow accustomed to this feeling of the lower back losing its curvature. So the curvature in the lower back just thrusts the energy up into my head, feeding the thinking and the ego. So when I round out the lower back by pulling in the belly and just rolling my tail under, this just gets sucked down. And basically you can't think. There's no inclination to think, because you're just with your energy and you're just feeling everything. And you can really tell how, as soon as you become distracted by thinking, by the thought process, by what's going on in your own head, you just lose the room. You lose your energy. You lose your connectedness. And you lose that bristling spirit that's always waiting for the next danger. This is why we get it so terribly wrong. It's because there's no danger in our lives anymore. We're civilized. So the spirit is there to save the day when you're in a real pickle. We have to sort of just create our own sense of danger. So this sense that the world is a little bit against you, in order to just spring that out. And then I'm just much more engaged and much more real. And then I can actually really sort of deal with the world on a compassionate level. But first of all, my spirit has to be sprung into action. Otherwise, it's pity rather than compassion. It's sort of coming from a weak place rather than a strong place. Full and empty. So just going backwards and forwards. So now just allowing the two legs to split into full and empty. So this is filling and this is emptying. This is filling and this is emptying. So don't worry about where the pull or the push is coming from. Just feel the full and empty. Clearly distinguish full and empty. That's the key to actually using energy. Because as this fills, it just allows this side of my body to just empty, and so it releases. And then as this side fills and becomes strong enough to support me, this side can just empty. So we really have to feel the full leg being wholly responsible for supporting the body. And then the other leg can flush out. It's just this leg that's supporting my body, and then this is just free. My fullness is flowing with my body, which allows the emptiness, the energy, to actually flow in the other direction. So as I go into the back foot, the energy is flowing forwards. And then as I come forwards, the energy is flowing back here. This is why you need to use your waist to actually bring the energy forwards again. If I just sink forwards, then all the energy will just dissipate here. So I have to sink forwards and then just flick with the waist here to bring that energy round to the front. And that produces the circularity of like a hook. So back and, I just want to feel that. Feel the full and the empty. Different parts of the mind. So we have to privilege the emptiness for a time because we're so used to feeling the fullness. So this is just holding me, and now I can just relax across the sacrum. Because I want the full and the empty to come up not just to the hips, not just to where the legs come into the hip bones, but actually the sacrum itself. So here it's where only one half of the sacrum that's with the fullness, and the other half of the sacrum is with the emptiness. So I'm just using this separation of full and empty to split myself into two, all the way up, really, all the way up the spine. So you can concentrate on this when you do the form. And then you'll get the cross energy really working. It won't just be something that's going on in your head. There will be real energy. So when my weight is in one leg, the energy is in the other side of my body. So as I sink into the back leg, this side empties and extends. And really, it's just the circle or the figure of 8, the return. So this flows out as I sink into this, flows out. And because it's returning all the time, it's that here that starts me coming into the foot. So just like we were doing at the beginning, it's the leg extending and cutting back on itself that draws me forwards. And the same here, it's the leg extending and cutting under. So how do I need to support myself here to let this just relax? It's difficult. Because if it doesn't relax, then the energy won't flow down and into the leg. And then my body will I'll have to push my body with the other leg or pull it artificially with the empty leg. It's the energy that's flowed down and come back on itself that started my movement. Try with the other foot forwards. This sense of release, something just lets go, particularly in the hip, but also in the sacroiliac and the other joints of the leg, the knee and the ankle. bring it back. And now let's just do the 2 circles. So it's the same feeling here, the sense that I'm reaching forwards, not just to meet the other person and start pulling them in, but to actually join with their push from behind. And then I can just turn this way. You basically have to just turn a little bit more. So turn a little bit more to get the hand coming in, and then just turn back. So you're very much with the circumference. You have a presence behind the other person. So this is sort of behind them. And then I can bring that back to my center. So I'm shifting from being over there to suddenly being here. So I really believe that, to get into this sort of stuff, you need to have early experiences of spirit coming to the rescue. So like traumatic experiences from which you are still suffering. Experiences that thrust you into a different reality, which is still humming inside you. So that you have experience, you know what's required to just let that hormone come out and produce this chemical and therefore psychological change. This is, why they say your worst enemy becomes your best friend, because it's the confrontation with the enemy, either person who is against you or those early traumas, that actually kicks your spirit into action and shows you what you're made of, shows you what you're capable of. Because the world of the ego is drab and boring. We try our best to make it colourful and interesting by generating fresh desires. But if you've got any intelligence, you just realize pretty quickly the scenery may be changing. So you may be going to a different holiday location, but you're the same arsehole. So now it should feel really round. So softness is the dream in every ache to become a better soul. So that's one of John's sayings. So first of all, you need that ache to become a better soul. And I think we all have that. We try to hide from it. That's the sense of what a life means. A life isn't meant to be simply consumed and enjoyed. There's a sense of progress. There's a sense that the difficulties that you encounter, the suffering that comes your way, makes you a better person. The wonderful experiences don't. And so that's like a dream something inside us in the heart just knows intuitively that that's what life is all about. And so there's something in you that sort of actively is searching for difficulty. Otherwise, one would never countenance having this sort of work in one's life, because it's difficult. I've got a student, and he's a big, tough Israeli, lovely guy. And a few weeks ago, he was just saying, "Oh, I'm thinking of giving it up. My knees are hurting. I just feel wretched all the time. Everything's falling to pieces in my life." And I just remember, when John said that to Leon once, Leon just smiled and said, sign of progress. And it really is. And he's made such a breakthrough, and he realizes now, he sort of carried on regardless of what he was feeling. But when you make a breakthrough, you don't make a breakthrough into something that you can be sure of. It's more like an openness. So you need that quiet and that stillness just in order to keep the openness. And it hurts. John used to use that word raw. It really feels like you've grazed your skin and it's weeping. But it feels real. Just the two circles again, but now just making it a figure of 8. So this hand, instead of it coming in and then me just taking it around the circle, now I'm bringing it into this point here on this leg rather than the point on this leg. And then this hand just carries it on out of the back. So it's like it comes in the hip and exits from the sacroiliac, and this hand just takes it around. So it's like it's just one thread that I'm just weaving around myself as a figure of 8. So I really have to keep this open. So even though I'm folding onto it, I have to push with the leg into the ground, like I'm trying to push myself back, just to keep this open. Because if I come into the leg too much, this will just close off. I had a student that was a Buddhist, heaven forbid. He always used to say, "You always tell me my energy feels great when I feel my worst." I said, "Well, that's just the way of it. When you feel great, you're basically just full of yourself." It's when you've been shocked out of self. That's when you have energy. Otherwise, you're just this bundle of force. So musicians, performers understand that. So musicians understand that, when they feel great about what they're doing, they're just swaggering really, and it will come across as pretty revolting. And when they're really struggling, assuming they're practiced enough, that's when the energy is coming out and when real communication is happening. Like Pat Metheny, read an interview with him, and he said early on, he realized that he actually performed best when he was really hungry. So whenever he's performing, he never eats. He doesn't eat from the time he got up, because he's performing like 300 times a year. He's just doing a Ramadan fast all the time, which is meant to be really, really healthy. We've got a student that's interested in living a long time. Everyone wants to live a long time. No one wants to sacrifice themselves. And he was telling me that he read an article, and there's two things they said were really important. One is to continue working past retirement age. And the other is intermittent fasting. Just having 1 or 2 meals at the end of the day. So that's what he's doing now, this student of mine. And in order to get a little bit of help, because everyone needs help and everyone's entitled to help nowadays, he's going to an ashram in India for 2 weeks, where the diet will be enforced. He's a lovely guy, actually. He's a lot older than me, and he looks like a really big, sort of thick-set right-wing Israeli, but he's not. And he's found that he loves elephants. So as well as spending 2 weeks in the ashram, he's spending, I think, a month tending to the elephants, washing them. Feel the continuity. This is what the figure of 8 gives us. It's like a ribbon, a lemniscate. It just wraps around and just binds everything together. And then just back. Yeah, so your whole body just feels like a hug or a smile. It's got a curve to it. It's got a round, inviting, containing reach. So the more I can swell out, the bigger my hug, the more I'm drawing into the Dantian. So it's not me releasing like this. I'm forcing a swell by tightening into my Dantian. So again, it's full and empty. So it's like the Dantian always feels full, not with food and shit, not bloated, but tight, dense. And the outside is just really vaporous and energetic. So this has become like a stone. And this has become, it's like I'm evaporating. Imagine the water just sort of evaporating from you. Now let's just bring it up. Head suspended. Sacrum just sort of relaxing down through the legs like this. So my legs just sagging slightly. So because we push with the legs all the time, the hips tend to take this sort of, it's like my bum's sticking out all the time. So I just want to really right that, so get rid of it, even if it means really bending the legs. So the sink of the sacrum down will actually give a lift to your belly. So this sense that the energy here is just coming up into your face. So when John would get into this, he'd just start crying. You know, his eyes would start watering because it was like smoke for him, this energy that was rising up. It's really coming underneath, but it feels like it's coming from the belly. And just a sense that something inside you is really itching to get into sort of full and empty movement. So don't let the stillness freeze into immobility. Always keep it moving, even if no one else can tell, you know. And the best way really is just to keep a little figure of 8 going around in the hips. Or just in the mind, really. So the only reason it will freeze and become still in the wrong way is because you started thinking to yourself. Because for this to have some sort of independent thinking going on that's not really related to what's happening with your present circumstances, the body needs to freeze. So you're just always melting.